It happened when I was working on the bookshelf. The bookshelf had gotten kind of wobbly, so I got out my tools to work on it a little bit. It had been leaning to one side, and I was afraid it could fall, so I just wanted to secure it to the wall a little better. My wife was in the kitchen doing something, probably making lunch. I figured out the problem and I got it leveled pretty well against the wall. I worked up a bit of a sweat, so I decided I was going to go into the kitchen for a glass of water. But I didn't make it to the sink. My wife must have dropped the whisk because it was in the middle of the floor and I slipped on it, my legs kicking out from underneath me, throwing my body against the dirty kitchen floor. I may have lost consciousness, I'm not sure. When all was said and done, both my feet were broken and I was confined to the house for nearly 3 months. I had problems with my feet before, mostly topical infections and stuff of that sort of type of thing, but I had never broken them before. Times got a little bit hard because we were sort of low on money. My wife needed to pick up some extra hours at the job to make up for me not working. So I spent long days home all alone. But after the first week, I started to not mind it so much. I was in a great amount of pain, but I was also on a great amount of pain medication. It was really hard to get around the apartment. I would lie on the couch all day, but when I would need to get up to use the bathroom or get something to eat, it was really difficult. My crutches were really uncomfortable, and they burned the inside of my arms. I had big marks and burns all over my arms, so I started crawling around on the floor. I would crawl on my hands and knees from the couch into the kitchen. At first it was hard on my knees, but I soon developed big calluses, and it became a lot easier. I started to eat whatever I could find on the lower shelves of the refrigerator. After a week of crawling, I was an expert. I was crawling nearly as fast as I used to walk. After a month or so, I started to really like my new lifestyle. I'd stay at home all day and find little things to do around the house, like organize the lower cupboards. Anything I could reach, I would do. So I'd organize the lower cupboards and alphabetize the record collection. Little things. And soon my whole disposition started to change. I started to look at things around me differently. And I think it had something to do with me crawling around on the floor so much. I noticed things I wouldn't normally notice, and I saw the world from a different perspective, and I liked seeing it from that perspective. I liked seeing the little inconsistencies in the house, and sometimes trying to fix them, or sometimes just appreciating them for what they were. My wife would sometimes joke with me, saying I seemed a little too comfortable crawling around on my hands and knees. And I thought it was pretty funny, but something about it sort of resonated with me. I did like crawling around. I resisted efforts to stand up and try and hobble around on the crutches. I despised the crutches. One day I actually broke a crutch in an attempt to stay away from the things. Even though my wife really wanted me to use the crutches, I decided I liked being on my hands and knees a little bit better. My physical therapist said I wasn't making as good progress as I should, and my wife was pressuring me to walk around a little bit more. After 2.5 months, I really couldn't resist. So I began trying to walk around, using the crutches. Once again, I noticed the change. Everything changed back to the way it was. And I just didn't like it as much. I missed the smells. I missed looking at the cracks, and I missed the corners. I had seen at eye level for all of my life, and I was tired of it. I tried to explain it to my wife. I tried to explain that I liked crawling around on my hands and knees, but she thought it was absurd. Sometimes she'd even ridicule me. It was just too sophisticated for me. I don't know if that's the right word, but it wasn't as exciting living on my 2 feet. 1 month after my recovery, I returned to crawling around the house. My wife threatened to leave me, but I knew she wouldn't. I hadn't really lost my mind in any way. I was still the same person I was before. I still had the same conversations, and I still was willing to do a lot of the same things. Just when I was in my home, I insisted that I was on my hands and knees. I even sort of wished I could be on my hands and knees when I was out in public, but I knew that was too much to ask of my wife, so I would return to my elevated position when I was outside. But when I stood up, I somehow just didn't feel like my normal self. I felt like a tooth full of Novocaine. I felt cut off. I felt numb. Have you ever put your plate on the floor when you're eating dinner and sat on your knees while you were eating your food off your plate? For some reason, the food just tastes better. I could still do normal things. I could watch TV. I would just do it resting on my elbows, sometimes on my knees, sometimes laying flat on the floor. And it really wasn't that disgusting. I cleaned up better now. I would scrub the floor. I actually found pleasure in scrubbing the floor. This is just the way I think I was meant to live out the rest of my years.